Hey, what is up, everyone? I am Joe DeHoyos. I am host of Beyond the Woodline. Real quick before we get started with today's show, for those of you who don't know, I am part of the JRG, which is a Jevning Research Group, headed up and founded by William Jevning. He's a real good friend of mine. He's been in the field, man, I bet close to 50 years now, and he's one of the top guys, in my opinion, in the field, and one of the guys you'll get a no BS answer from. Um, So we have teams in Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Maryland, New York State, Oregon, California. Did I say Oklahoma already? Um, Mississippi, and of course here in Texas. And I always leave somebody out. I don't have my list right here with me, which I usually do. But yeah, if you guys are interested in joining the team, man, let us know. We will vet you. We don't try to keep any weirdos in the group, and for all kinds of freaking reasons. But yeah, and then so everyone that comes in the group, we try to vet them, and if we set you up with anyone, we make sure to vet those guys also. And we make sure that you guys get together, make sure you guys are on the same page, and nothing crazy goes on or happens. So we try to protect everybody, and we ask you guys to protect yourselves too, of course. Uh, but for the most part, everyone I've met, man, lifelong friends. Will be lifelong friends. I got friends in the Bigfoot field that I consider family now, and so we have a bunch of really, really, really great people. I think in this Bigfoot field, you have a few stragglers here and there, but those are pretty easily weeded out. But yeah, if you're interested in joining the team, man, let me know. You can get in touch with me. I'm all over Facebook, all over Instagram and TikTok and everything else. I post all my shows and content there. Uh, or you can contact me at beyond.woodline@gmail.com. You If you want to go out into the field, you can. You don't have to go out so many times a year or so many times a month. You go out when you can. And if you can't get out or you don't want to get out, like I don't ever go out in the summertime anymore. The last 2 summers I've called it quits. It's just too damn hot here in Texas, and I'm getting too damn old for that. So I mainly now I go out during the fall and the wintertime and early spring. Summertime is out of the question now. But yeah, you don't have to get out into the field if you can't or you just don't want to. You can do your research from behind your laptop, your cell phone, library, newspapers, whatever you want to do. And you can give us suggestions on techniques. You can find witnesses for us. You can find areas for us. You can find the histories of those areas for us. So yeah, anything that you guys want to do and you want to participate and help the group out, and help the Bigfoot field out, really. Yeah, hit me up at beyond.woodline@gmail.com. If you guys have any kind of strange encounters with anything, whether it be the cryptids or paranormal, UFOs, or anything that's really strange, man, let me know. Again, beyond.woodline@gmail.com. And with that being said, I know you guys don't tune in to hear me rattle off at the mouth. I have tonight with me Mr. Roger Williams. How you doing, Roger?
Doing good, Joe.
Thanks a
Uh,
lot, man. Yeah, I
glad.
appreciate you coming on.
Oh yeah, it's fun, and I started doing things like this 7 or 8 months ago to get my story off my chest or my back finally, and it was just so freeing, and it like you said, I've met a lot of people that have become really good friends doing this. Everybody's so supportive, and I think your shows like yours and the one I started, it lets the regular guys get involved, guys and gals, and they can learn and contribute. So, and y'all forgive my voice. I don't know. It's been one of those days. So, but yeah, I appreciate you invite me on. It's always good to talk to people and hear stories, but also tell about things that happen. Maybe it can help somebody in your audience understand some things maybe that's happened to them. 'Cause I don't understand what happened to me. We just talk about it, and maybe somebody can explain to us.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And one of the reasons why I do this is because I like to get just good information out there for people and let people know that strange stuff does happen to people, and good people just like me and you, and hardworking people. It doesn't have to happen to people. I think there's a misconception that it only happens to these hillbillies, moonshiners or something like that, right? And or somebody who's crazy, right?
Right.
the stuff happens to a lot of people every single day, and like I said, it doesn't matter, what field you're in. It doesn't matter if it's the cryptids or the paranormal, UFOs or alien stuff. Everybody seems to experience something, and I like being the guy, especially like in my friends and family group. They're like, "Go ask Joe about this. Something happened,
Yeah,
Joe."
yeah,
And I like being that guy. It's pretty fun. I love it when family reaches out to me and says, "Hey, man, this happened to me," or I have a coworker or friend of a friend or whatever, and they want to talk to me. I'm like, shit, give them my number. I'll talk to them.
yeah. And
Yeah,
and what we've lived through. I'm 52, and we've lived through people. The quiet stages where you couldn't say anything, and then like you mentioned, if you do see somebody on the news, they pick out the worst possible person they can for us, you know, and make it. And they're laughing. The anchors are laughing, and it's always just in a light. They're making fun of people. Is actually what they're doing. But shows like this, like you said, lets the regular person know, hey, it does happen to normal people. And the when I first started telling my story, I was 100% um, whatever they say, flesh and blood or whatever. But I've had strange things happen in my past, and then even recently out at night where we've
yeah,
seen some orbs and some strangeness, not by myself but with witnesses, and this is before I was in that mode of, hey, I need to document everything. So I didn't have a camera. I didn't have, I just had maybe the phone, and we saw this orb for over 20 minutes. It was 20 yards away, 10 foot up in a tree. It shouldn't have been there. And I didn't know what to call it at first because it wasn't perfectly round, but I've had friends and people say, well, it doesn't have to be, round. And it was pulsating. It was about, 8 or 10 inches long and different shapes, but it was connected. And we backed the truck up multiple times and pulled up trying to get a better look at it, or a different angle on it. Let's put it that way. And so we can't explain it. I wasn't brave enough to walk over there, and we didn't put the camera, we didn't put the phone up. I don't know if it would have picked it up anyway. So everybody's like, "Oh, where's the proof? Where's the video?" Where when you're seeing something for the first time, uh, you're it was hard enough not to start the truck up and leave, and we're in the middle of nowhere. So, but the good thing is, I had a witness, there with me, and just like 99% of the stuff I'll tell you, I've had witnesses, thank goodness. But the first time was just me, So
yeah. And let's see, Sandra. She says, I took a bad fall and in the hospital. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Sandra. I hope you get better. Sandra is one of my listeners. She's been listening to her for a long time. So, Sandra, I hope you feel better and you get well soon.
hello, Sandra. Nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man. But yeah, if you don't mind, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what got you started with all this stuff, or what was your introduction?
Okay, yeah. So I grew up. I'm still here. I grew up in southern Middle Tennessee. If you look at a map and you look at Nashville, it's in the Nashville Basin. It's in like a bowl, and there's a ridge system that's a circle ridge system. I'm in the southern end of that, and just grew up in the country. Didn't have anything like the kids do now. We had to get outside. Hey, nice to see y'all. I got some people too, Don and Wendell. But anyway,
You got a fan club going on in here.
yeah. But so anyway, so Don only lives 2/10 of a mile from where I had that Bigfoot sighting. What I'm about to tell. He's a former game warden, Tennessee game warden, and he's been my go-to guy all my life. So anyway, I was 14 years old and had a habit of stepping outside and checking out the wildlife in the fields, where I would hunt and just take walks. I walked in the woods by myself without anything other than a pocket knife many times. I've been out in the dark with no flashlight or a $2 flashlight, that's really not doing any good,
Right.
not scared of anything, which that's maybe being a little naive, because there are things out there that that can sneak up on you. And you know, so my first time, I had some things happen before this. I'll get to later, but I stepped out in this field beside our house and looked up to where I hunted that corner, and just wide open field, green. There's a hill, it goes up to the right, and a fence line, dry creek bed on the left, and so there's a point up there about 180 yards. That if you come back from the woods, most people would come that way in my family. And my dad, he was about 5'7", 5'8", and I'd seen him up there hundreds of times coming back from hunting. And all of a sudden, I get this movement to my left, up to the left, and this thing steps out. And when I say thing, immediately knowing how tall my dad was, this thing was massive, and it was all one color. And when people say, I love this, when people say the first thing I noticed, that's not the way it is. It's like you're noticing like many different things at the same time. That's why your mind is scrambled for a little bit, because you're not supposed to be seeing this thing that's this big, all one color. At 200, 300 yards, I can tell. If you're standing up there, I could tell you had your hat on backwards. I could tell you have a black shirt on. I
Mhm.
can't make out facial features, but if you're wearing blue jeans or khakis, I'll be able to tell that. So I noticed it was all one color, and I like to tell people, try to explain it, put the visual in their head, that it was color of a Hershey's milk chocolate bar, not the wrapper. It's
Okay.
it's a
Yeah.
it's not reddish, not dark brown, but that medium color,
Yeah.
and it looks up the hill, and I'm looking at its right shoulder, and I noticed this limb, the tree. After 35 years, I believe it's still there. It's dead, but I don't know if that limb's still there. But I saw about where it was at, and this thing turns at the waist and looks at me. And at that point, I'm like, should I run? I'm starting to get nervous because my mind's starting to put the things together. Like, this is entirely too big. This is one color, and now this thing's looking at me. And so I'm about 50 yards or so from the side door there, and naively, as a 14-year-old, thought I probably could beat it to the back door. But now, some things I've learned, maybe not. They're faster than what I thought they were, from witnesses and friends
Right.
that have seen them drop on all fours and accelerate. So anyway, I didn't make out any facial features, but what I did get to see, what I think was probably in the top three things I could have seen at the time. So I had walked up that hill many, many times and been, 6 foot, uh, at 14 already, chubby, going up. The grass was intertwined. The guy didn't, he was old man. He didn't bush hog that is, you know, every year. So you'd have regrowth, and with the regrowth about, a foot and a half, 2 foot high, you'd have to step through it. You couldn't. So my feet would come out and over, and I'm leaning forward, trying to step over, and just I imagine I look like an idiot trying to go up this hill, with my motion. So, but what I noticed with this thing, when it started walking, the feet were up and over, straight out in front, like a walking horse motion,
Okay.
straight out and over the grass, straight out and over. The body lean was not as much, and where it would have taken me minutes to go up this hill, my whole encounter didn't last but maybe 30 seconds at going back and trying to best guess. So this thing got up this hill in this grass probably in 10 to 12 seconds, where I would have taken a while, and the
Mhm.
motion was completely different. And I think I locked on to that because of how easy and smooth and how effortless that it was walking. And I knew from my experience that shouldn't be possible. So, if I was a kid that stayed in the yard and, stayed in the house or whatever, and I saw this, I might not have realized how important that was. And I didn't know what it was. I had an idea what it might be, And but growing up in the southeast in the late 70s and 80s, we didn't have the researchers like the Pacific Northwest, or we didn't have the resources to go. And the library was only probably 10 miles from me, but that back then that was the other side of the world. I didn't have a way to go. And so what I learned later in life. And as I started putting two and two together, and hearing some of these researchers and some of these normal people that we see on YouTube, and some of their experiences, I realized I had some not class A encounters before, but with sounds and stuff like that. And one of them gets a little crazy. But when I learned about infrasound and what could be possible with that, and that it's a real thing and it's measurable, and when I saw the guys doing the experiment on the television, I was like, oh no, because
Right.
that jittery feeling in the stomach. And so that, so this was about a year or so before, but it was in the same area. It was just a few yards away, but I was on the other side of the dry creek going hunting in the snow. And when I stepped out and looked at this field, it was beautiful. The woods that I usually go to, when I say they were dark, I mean they felt dark. And I paused. I had this feeling of just dread came over me. I couldn't move. I couldn't. I tried to take a step three times with my right foot, and in my head, probably 13-year-old, you know, you're crazy. You're being a punk. This is stupid. Go on. I couldn't move my foot, and I had this feeling if I went in those woods, I wasn't coming back out. So for some reason, I still don't know why, in my head, I said, if you'll let me go, I'll turn around with my right foot, I'll go back home, and I won't come back today. And he just let go. And when it let go and I was able to move, I did exactly what I said. And because that's, you having something like that happen to you is one thing, but having that release feeling after you make this promise immediately, well, either that's in my head or it happened. I don't know. I'm like 13 years old. So I go back home and my parents are like, what are you doing back so early? You're looking forward to hunting. And I lied, didn't want to like a punk. Oh, it's cold out there. It's too cold. I'm going to stay in today. And they knew I'd been looking forward to it because we don't get a chance to hunt in the snow, hardly at all. And it was only like 2 or 3 inches, but it was a fun opportunity that I didn't get to enjoy because of whatever happened. Didn't think about that for years. Didn't tell anybody until I saw, I was probably in my 30s when I saw the infrasound experiment, and they were showing people how they would ask them, how do you feel, and they were talking about the jitteriness and all that. So, but anyway, you go back and how this got started. My son, I didn't know this show existed at the time. Finding Bigfoot. Everybody that's interested in the subject has seen that or they know about it, and they have different ideas on the show or whatever. They like it, they hate it, whatever, they love it. So how this ties into me, I was cooking supper, single dad, and I was cooking something. I can't remember. It was in the middle of the day, I think. But my son had something on his phone, and I heard the how on his phone, and I froze in my tracks. And I backed up, and I was like, "What was that?" Oh, there's a show called Finding Bigfoot, and this is supposedly a Bigfoot howl, and Matt Moneymaker, blah blah blah. And I'm like, "What you just played on there is supposed to be a Bigfoot?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Play it again." I made him play it 4 or 5 times. I'm like, "I've got to talk to you." I said, "I've heard that half a dozen times," and I said, "I always wondered what it could have been." And the first time I ever heard it, there was that shook me up literally. It had to be 600 to 800 yards away from my backyard.
Oh, wow.
Actually, where this thing was going, that that time I saw it. And but it's what everybody says. You hear it, and it vibrates you. Depending on how close you are. And I'm
Right.
thinking, how can I feel a sound that's that far away? And later in life, went to concerts and, the speakers or football stadiums, and you feel that vibration or whatever, but you know what's causing it. Um,
Right.
I spent a lot of years being confused, and so when the Finding Bigfoot show came um, to me by him, by my son, then I started saying, well, you know what? Let's check out YouTube. Let's check out the internet. And then there's this whole world of BS, legit research, and you're talking about work filtering through everything. I question everything. I'm not.
Mhm.
I'm even though I've seen one and I've had things happen. When I went into it, the good thing is pretty quickly, you could tell what was faked and whatever. And
Right.
so, even through all these years of watching videos and breakdowns and uh, people describing things, if you put me on the spot and say, Roger, I need some videos that you think are legit, out of the thousands and thousands that are out there, I might could come up with five. And I'm not going to tell you that they are. I'm going to tell you there's a good chance that they are real, right?
Right.
So I've learned more from talking to witnesses and watching them talk, their body language, how they get shook up, how they break down sometimes, where they're reliving this fearful event. That's how you know it's real. When you can see them reliving this whatever happened to them, and it was traumatic to this person. So this is why I like doing this, because we can, even though we're not on the porch talking, we can still see each other,
Right.
and you can tell a lot about someone's body language. And I'm in a situation, I thought, when I started seeing the shows, I thought, oh good, a lot of people have seen these things.
Mhm.
Well, you come to find out it's kind of rare, and I'm in a spot where nobody has to convince me, because I've seen the proof. So I can go different routes and question and know, what I want to know from people. And I've got so many friends that they want so bad to see one. And mine is a mild encounter. I have people
Right.
that I know personally that probably should be in counseling right now because of what happened to them.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
I don't want to bore you too much, but that's what got it all
No, you do.
started. And
Yeah.
and it and I've had people say, "Oh, you've had too many things happen, and there's no way it can be true." I'm like, "Wait a minute, listen to the timeline. There's 35 years in between that
Right.
and the next thing that happened." So it didn't go away. It didn't go out of my mind. I did change the way I hunted. I didn't go in the woods 2 hours before daylight. I
Mm.
you know I changed a lot of things that I was doing. I don't know if I've ever told many people this. I actually was a big in the woods hunter. I
Mhm.
became a edge of the field hunter after this, and I will get in the woods. We're going Saturday, and in a place where we've had a rock tossed at us, we found uh, two trees crossed. We found two snapped trees for no reason that are alive. Nothing fell on them. No bark
Right.
scuffed where it was a piece of machinery. Absolutely no reason for these things to be broken, and both at about the 5.5 foot mark. So,
Really.
um, so we're going. I mean, we've never felt threatened at this place. We're lucky enough to have two areas. They're
Good.
north end of the county, south end of the county, and thank goodness far enough away from my house that
Yeah.
I'm not there
That's
with
good.
them. But yeah,
Yeah, man. So let me back up real quick and ask you this: when you saw that creature, what did you think you were looking at?
at first I didn't. Well, I didn't know.
Hmm.
Uh, the only time, there were some books in the library back in the day, the old books that might have the Loch Ness monster and stuff like that in there, UFOs or whatever. I liked Hardy Boys mysteries and stuff like that. So I had picked up some of those books with the Bermuda Triangle, and I had seen a story about Bigfoot, but that that was in California. That was way away from Tennessee, and the one that I had seen that everybody had seen was Patty. It wasn't stabilized at that point, I don't think. But the way this thing was shaped, it was barrel chested, female, just totally different. Mine was the one I saw was more athletic. It was more built more like a NFL linebacker, so to speak. But I didn't know to back then. And I may not know now if it happens again to look at the ratios, the length of the arms or whatever. All I can tell
Yeah.
you is it did not look right. You know what I
Okay.
mean? If I see a
Right. Right.
coyote 300 yards away, I'm going to say, Joe, there's a coyote. If I see a mountain lion, I'm gonna say, "Hey Joe, there's a mountain lion," and or hey, there's my uncle walking because he's got a limp. You can tell as in a 14-year-old's mind trying to put all make sense of everything I was seeing. It just didn't look right. Um,
Yeah.
the the motion the motion of the legs and the way the back was and I don't even remember what the arms were doing because I was focused on the legs because I knew what I looked like going up that hill. So I was focused on that shouldn't be happening. So I missed out on a lot, but I really did get to see a lot that actually made me question things as I was learning, about the flexible foot. Uh, I got to ask Cliff Barackman uh, about the flexible foot, and he gave me like a uh, 5 minute answer. Bobo, it was a question I sent into their show, and Bobo said I understand what he's saying. It makes sense. So if you think about it, if now I'm not a scientist, so I wouldn't have thought about this unless I had seen the motion. So if you've got a flexible foot and if something's walking up an incline and that foot flexes, then it doesn't have to lean like we do, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that made sense to me why the back was almost straight. And that in this
Right.
motion like this, it was putting I didn't see the feet hit the ground, but I've
Right.
replayed this over in my head. I don't know how many times. And
Right.
and when you find out supposedly that they have certain abilities, then I was thinking about the angles that it creates or doesn't create with their feet. And
Right.
then it started making sense what I saw. So, and somebody like me, Roger from Marshall County, Tennessee, 14-year-old kid, um, I saw this motion, and I wanted to share it with people to maybe help somebody that's a serious, researcher or whatever. Maybe it's that piece of the puzzle that they could do something with it. But it bugged me for a long time how it could walk like a walking horse on two legs and not be leaning like we did. And of course, the height of it allowed it to step over the grass. So there was a lot I was taking in. And
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of lucky that I did get from it what I did because the feeling, it wasn't fear, but it was um, kind of, this is weird how to explain it, kind of a euphoric disbelief
Okay.
because it just wasn't right. You know,
Yeah.
I'm 14 years old. I've never seen anything like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I heard a good quote one time. I was on the show and the guy said, "Well, what do we always say? You got the Roger 5 seconds before the sighting and the Roger 5 seconds afterwards." I said, "You're right." Because once you
Yeah.
see something like that, you're like, okay, what else is real that's not supposed to be real? And you start to
Right.
question other things.
Yeah. 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 And so, like, how tall would you say this thing was? I
So,
just want to ask you
okay, we've got a good educated guesstimation. So that limb that came out, it drooped down like this, and when it walked out, it just happened to be standing really close to it, and I saw how close the top of the head was, and I went up there twice. I went up there by myself later, and I knew that I could reach. I think I can reach right now 7'5", 7'6", 7'7", depending on my shoes, on my tiptoes. I can reach up a wall and that it'll be within 2 inches there. So I went up, and the reason I knew that, we had a pool. It was pretty deep, and I had measured before, being a stupid kid. So I went up there, and I'm like, okay, this thing was about somewhere between 7.2 and 7.8, 7.9, in that range, because I can't tell you perfectly. And then
Right.
my dad had laughed at me when I told him that I saw something strange. And I thought it was a Bigfoot. He laughed. So a few years later, no more than 2 years later, him and my mom had an experience where something jumped off a bank behind them in the road. He had pulled over to relieve himself at night, and it was something on 2 feet that jumped, landed in the middle of the road, and jarred the road, and then started running to them. And it was only, as a crow flies, 3 miles probably from where we live. He came to me and he was like, how big was this thing you said you saw? And I told him, and he was, even then, even though he heard how heavy this thing was, and it broke some trees up on the bank and then jumped this fence and landed behind them. Even though he knew it was very large, he couldn't wrap his head around. I said about 7.5 feet, give or take. And he went up there. He said, "You know how tall that is?" I said, "I know, definitely. I know how tall it is. Yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you." And the one thing you can't explain ever, if when somebody asks you to describe these things, the one thing you can't get across to them, if I say 7 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot, 5 foot, they can't. They are so different that you can't get the mass across to them. Like,
Right.
okay, you may see a Shaquille O'Neal. He's got a 22, 23 inch foot.
Mhm.
It documented. Nike makes him, or whatever brand his shoes he wears, they make him shoes. So he has that length of a foot, and he's 7'2", whatever he is. The mass is not the same. They're built
Right.
different. They're
Mhm.
they're they're from the shoulders to the neck to just the core. It's just maybe 3 times the size of a human or more. I don't know. But
Mhm.
when you start talking about adding that type of weight and mass, um, I saw a 24-inch track the other night on my show, and the first thing I thought was like, man, that's impossible. But then I
Yeah.
think, well, wait a minute, that's only an inch longer than Shaquille O'Neal. And then I'm
Right.
thinking about the
Right.
mass that I've seen, and like, okay, we take Shaquille's foot, let's say his ball of his foot, maybe this wide, then you add a little mass to it, and you've got this track right in front of me that this guy's showing me.
Hmm. Okay.
So because I don't lucky enough or unlucky enough to see one, it lets me ask questions or make realizations a lot of times where I've got friends from this county. Kevin Wright had a up close and 20-yard encounter. He can tell you what the teeth look like. He can tell you what the pores in the skin looks like. He can tell you what the hair, and it didn't have hair here. It didn't have hair on a little spot of its chest and the hands. And he said it was clean. It was a very clean animal. And I asked him about the nose. It didn't have the triangle nose. It had the hooded nose like we do. He said everything was just bigger, and he was telling me he was about 13 or 14. And when you got a guy standing there telling you these things, and I asked his brother about it because he was with him, and he ran. He don't have as many details, but Kevin said I was stuck because they interrupted this thing trying to steal a baby calf. And the farmer had
Oh
told
wow.
him, "Look, I've got livestock missing, small, somebody's stealing them. If you see something, let me know." He said they heard the calf bawling, sounded terrified, and they thought somebody's stealing this calf. He said, "First thing I thought was it was a bear because it was bent over." He said, when it stood up, he said it was about going, judging by the fence it stepped over without touching it. He estimates this thing to be somewhere in the 9 foot range, maybe a little taller. He said it was definitely a male. He said, but the one thing that stood out to him was two little kids who walked up on this thing trying to get dinner, right? And he said it let the calf go. He said, and it made a noise with its mouth like that. He looked frustrated, looked at them like he was frustrated, and those two little kids. He said, look, he was trying to figure us out too. But he said when he did that, noise, I saw the teeth, and he said I didn't see any canines, but they were big, square, like a horse almost, but bigger. And when you get somebody that when I say mine is a little more, uh, it's not sensational at all. And I hear some of these people tell me about being that close to one of these. I said, Kevin, what, like you did, what were you thinking? He said, I couldn't run. He said, my brother was in a spot where he could run. I had a fence over here. He said, I was thinking if I run, I might end up being dragged off. Right. So he stood there and watched. Thank goodness he stood there and watched all of this and can give really good details. But I'm sorry, I get sidetracked. I've got so many.
Oh man, you're good. You're good. You're good.
But that's the good thing about this. I've heard so many stories just from this county, just from
Okay.
Marshall County, Tennessee, and they're people either I've known all my life or they have these jobs where you have to be pretty sane to have these certain jobs,
Yeah.
and maybe and oh I could tell those all night, but yeah, I mean that's how I got into this, and that's how it all started, and the the feel it the feeling the first initial feeling and the size and the motion of all that. The only thing I can go back to is it just wasn't at that moment. It just wasn't right. It was something different. It was something I was probably not supposed to be looking at. Um, and then I get interested in the subject, of course. Like what was this? But I had nowhere to go. So
Okay.
I suppressed this for years. But when I finally found out YouTube and all this stuff had supposed information, oh, I was digging like crazy. But I am a skeptic. I'm one of the bigger skeptics of evidence as you'll come across
Yeah.
because I take it personal when people hoax stuff
Yeah.
because you're hurting me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
I've been laughed at. I've been laughed at because of these weird hoaxes that people just for attention or whatever. I mean, people
Yeah.
like me that have seen these things and tried to share it years ago, that's who they hurt.
Yeah.
So I take it personal
Yeah.
when I mean, I don't get mad at anybody or whatever, but it's just like I just wish
Oh, I
there's
get mad all the
I
time.
just wish
I
they'd
get mad all
stop.
the time. Dude, I get mad so much. You ought to see
Mhm.
the arguments I get into,
I
especially with
bet
these people with these
because
crazy pictures. Dude, with these crazy pictures, I've about had enough of these pictures in the
yeah.
red circles.
Well,
I'm done with that.
Joe, what about this part? What about this part? You have great people that come watch your shows. They trust you. I
Mhm.
have great people that come watch mine, thank goodness, and they trust me. And you'll see them online get fooled by something that we pick up pretty quick. That's not real. That's
Yeah.
AI. That's this, whatever. And they'll defend somebody or they'll show you the picture or they show it to you privately, and you're like, you don't want to let them down. You don't want to hurt their feelings. And then,
Right.
but you get mad at the person that did it to them, and
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Exactly.
and I
Exactly.
know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't want to say I get into arguments, but I'll make my point. I'll be like, dude, you need to quit with this.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, I'll go off on a tangent right
Me
now about
too. I'll
that.
get up on my stump too, but we're on the same page. It's just
Yeah.
it's frustrating.
It's frustrating. It
There
really
you
is.
go.
Yeah. But yeah, let me show you something real quick. We were talking about the footprints. I just thought about this. I got this from I don't know if you know who Shane Church is, or if you ever heard of Shane.
I don't think
Shane
so.
Church. He's from here in Texas, and
Okay.
he found this in Oklahoma. I'll try to the down light. There you go. You can probably see a little bit better.
Wow.
Yeah, he got this in
What's
Oklahoma.
the width on
And
that?
I don't remember the width. He didn't put it down on the back here,
That's crazy.
but I don't remember if it's 16 or 18 inches long.
Is that?
But
And so there you go. You
yeah,
you see a human male that
but I don't
has
know.
a 16
I
inch,
got this dumb
17
light
inch.
on, but you might be able to.
Oh yeah,
Can you see the calluses on it better that way?
that's crazy.
And even at the creases right here in the middle,
Yeah.
you know.
Look at the width of the heel.
And
Four
there's only
toes?
4 toes on this one. But one thing we don't know is if maybe the pinky toe didn't make an impression.
Yeah,
Maybe he didn't have a pinky toe.
right.
Maybe like some people have their pinky toe kind of up a little bit. Maybe that was a thing too. But yeah,
Well, I've
yeah,
heard from people who've done this for a long time that there's five, four, and three, and they
mhm,
and what
yeah.
what I've been told is the less toes they have, the more aggressive they can be. I don't know if that's true
I
or not.
I don't know.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's the first I've ever heard of that. But
Yeah.
I know we ran into some aggressive ones not too long ago. But well, they weren't really aggressive, but they scared the hell out of us. Uh, but yeah. And you're talking about that tall one. My friend Walter ran into one, and he told me how tall it was. He told me it was like 9.5 feet tall,
Wow.
and I was kind of like, maybe he was just scared, right?
Yeah.
And he said there was like a white dot on the tree, right,
Yep.
which is a fungus.
Yep.
So we went and measured it, 9.5 feet tall,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that
mean,
was crazy.
and there, this. There's some people when the stuff hits the fan, they don't panic. They're taking in,
Yeah,
and then there's some people that run. There's some. So if there's five of us, if five of us are seeing something, and they ask us all five to describe it, it's going to be different perspectives. It's going to be different,
right.
So I don't know why I'm like this, but I've had some bad stuff happen, and it seems like things slow down for me when it's happened.
Yeah,
And I can give you details. I don't know why that
mhm,
is. I don't know if it's. I just don't know. But
yeah. No, yeah, I'm the same way.
it,
I really uh, I take everything in as
yeah,
it's happening, and then I'll process it later.
right, yeah,
You know.
that's me. I'll go and I'll be driving down the road and I may be thinking about something that happened 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And like what was that or what it. And I'm new to this part of it. We've had some. What got this started back was in 2020. My son and I, that's him calling right now. I can't. We went to this new place to hunt, and we were just scouting. We weren't in hunting mode because it was a couple weeks before hunting season. We were being quiet, but I had my phone. I had this phone right here. Actually, I've had this one a while. I had it in my shirt pocket, and hadn't thought about Bigfoot in years. I've been hunting and hadn't had anything happen, and definitely wasn't thinking of it this day. We were out having a big time. We hadn't got to hunt together in a long time, and we were walking up this hill on the backside of this place in the middle of nowhere on the south end of this county, and I saw a tree break. You know, about that big around hardwood, and it was about a 5.5 foot mark, and it just broken. And at first I was like, dang, what did that? I'm looking for the limb that broke it, that fell, the tree that fell on it, but if a tree falls on it, you're looking. I'm looking at the roots, and this thing is straight up. It's not damaged. The bottom part, and I'm like, that's a that's a hardwood. It looked like it exploded. It looked the splinters
Yeah.
exploded back this way, right? And I'm like, that's a really high pressure quick break, is what that is. And we're looking, and I pointed it out to him, and then the thought crossed my mind: wait a minute, is this looks like one of those markers that I've seen on some show? You know,
Yeah.
I stepped past it up the hill, and my phone. Nobody said anything. Siri goes, I don't quite understand. So I grab yeah, I'm like, oh, we're in the woods. I'm not hunting, but that's first reaction. I grab it, and right as that's happening, this rock about that size
Oh wow.
is tossed and lands probably 7 to 10 yards from us, skips down, hits another rock or two, and comes to the rest here, right in my peripheral, because I'm looking this way. My son's looking up the hill towards that, and it came through a cedar thicket, really low to the ground cedar there. So I took all this in, but it was so confusing because it all happened at the same time. And my son, I don't guess I reacted quick enough. He said, "So we just going to ignore that we had a rock tossed at us?" I said, "No." I said, "No, I'm trying to figure out what the next move is, right? Because
Yeah.
whatever did it has thumbs. It's either a hunter over there that's mad, or it's something else." And I hadn't thought of something else in a long time. And so we decided to back out, to not turn our backs on whatever that was, back out and discuss it later. And so we discussed the tree, and couldn't figure out why that happened. We didn't know why the phone triggered at the same time. And then the rock, of course. Well, a year later, we went up. We continued to hunt, but we didn't go up on that hill. um, we had a few strange things that happened during that hunting season with smells. Um, my son heard a sound that he said it start. He thought it was a bull way off in the distance at first. He said, but it finished like a monkey. I said, wait a minute.
Oh,
He
okay.
said, at first I thought it was a bull bellowing. It's southern there. Uh, he said, but then as it got higher and it finished like a gorilla kind of sort of primate sound. And
Okay.
I'm like, oh, don't be telling me that. so so we go and we look. Um, I got to thinking, like I told you I do. I'm like, I wonder what's behind those cedars. And we went back there, and I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk. We're going to talk. We're not going to slip up on anything by accident. Whatever's here is going to know we're here. I don't want that to happen again. Whatever that was, and I want to go up behind that and see what's back there. When we went around behind it, the prettiest big woods opened up in this bowl, and as far 150 200 yards up this ridge as far as you could see. And as soon as I saw that, it kind of like, uh-oh. I said, if we'd have walked 15 20 more yards, whatever was back here couldn't have gotten away without us seeing it. You think that was a warning, just kind of scare us off? He said, well, that makes sense, because I assumed it was thick, just like that front little part there. But then I got to thinking, well, maybe it was just a slight type of warning. And
Yeah.
I mean, you have a rock tossed at you in the woods by
Yeah.
yourself. I mean, now I understand the hickory nuts and all that stuff. The squirrels will drop them straight down. They'll hit you on top of the head. That scares some people, and they think, oh, I just got a hickory nut tossed at me by a
Yeah.
Bigfoot. Well, if it's coming straight down, that's one thing. There's probably a squirrel. If it's coming to hit you in the ear from this side, you might need to be paying attention. So
Right. Yeah.
whatever angle it's coming at, and you talk about misidentification. You y'all get out in the woods, and you know the sounds in the dark are they're magnified,
Right.
and they
Yeah.
my son, I love having him with me because he's the animal guy. And then Don Odom, he's in the chat. Him being a former game warden, if we get something on audio, I'm like, hey, what is this? And he'll let us know. Well, one
Right.
night we're out at this place on the north end of the county, and we did this whistle, loud whistle. I'm like, uh-oh. And we'd already had some activity, uh, in the days and weeks leading up to this. We're out there in the dark, and this clear whistle 20, 30 yards away from us in the woods. And I look at him, and I'm like, oh no. He said, no. He said, be quiet. And we listened. It happened two more times. He said, Daddy, I think that's a female mountain lion whistling for her cubs. I said, what? I said, cats can whistle like that? He said, yes. And we get home, I'll show you on YouTube. I'm like, okay. And he was
Yeah.
right. He replayed it. Thank goodness he was there. So it's always good to have somebody to
Yeah.
rein you back in. Like, no, I think this is possibly what it is. And he was right. So if I'd have been out there by myself, I'd have probably said, Joe, I had a Bigfoot whistled at me three times.
Yeah.
You know,
So, yeah, one time I was out and I heard this scream. It sounded like a chimpanzee, no doubt about it. I was like, "What the hell is this?" And I had to record it. I still got to record it somewhere. And man, I was sending it to everyone I knew. Even the non-Bigfoot people, because I like to cover all my bases.
right.
And nobody knew. And I was sending it to some hunters, people that I knew that were hunters. And so, like my best friend, we've been best friends since, man, seventh grade, right? So I've known him, man, a long, long, long time. And he is a big time hunter. He knows his animals. And I sent it to him. I said, hey, man, what the hell is this? Have you ever heard this before? And man, he messaged me right back. He goes, hold on. He calls me up. He calls his wife over. He's like, hey, come here, check it. Listen to this. So he plays it for her. He goes, what's this? She goes, oh, that's an owl. And I said, what? And she goes, yeah, that's an owl. And he goes, they cut down a bunch of woods nearby his house because he lives out in the country. And he goes, they cut down a bunch of woods, and all these owls came onto the property. He goes, Joe, they were screaming just like this. He goes, we didn't know what the hell they were. We walk outside, he goes, we see these owls out there screaming. He says, but I
Cool.
tell you what, if you hadn't if I didn't know it was an owl,
Right.
he goes, I would have told you I didn't know what it was.
Right.
He said, but it's an owl.
And that,
And I said, okay,
and you
good.
know, that information made you feel better
Yeah, yeah,
because
it
you can
did,
move
and
on
it
from
didn't make
that.
me.
You know,
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be looking like an idiot,
well,
you know.
well, well. It. I understand what you're saying, but I had
Yeah.
a friend say he was a former police officer in Nashville, and
Mhm.
he was on my show a couple months ago, and he was talking about it's important to get out and do what we're doing, and you know, and I've been a hunter all my life. There was a gap there for a few years, but I've got a pretty good grasp on the local animals. You know, if I were
Mhm.
out there where you were at, there might be a few I might not,
Yeah.
know what they were.
Yeah, of course.
But what he called it was his your sound bank
Yeah.
that you identify something pretty quick. You know what it is. So it's good to have different different people to
Right.
talk to because I've I've got people that send me things, and because like I told you earlier before we come on, I'll tell people the truth.
Yeah.
And I got one guy sent me this audio, and there's some famous people that listen to it, and they're talking about UFOs and this, and that, and the other, and so I'm listening to it, and something just wasn't right. And I listened to it several times, and I was like, I texted him back. I said, "Hey," I said, I know what state you're in. You're pretty close to me. I said, "Have you ever fished with cicadas?" He said, "No." And what had happened? He put his recorder out, a digital recorder, and
Mhm.
I'm telling you, it was a weird electrical type sound, and there was people that have done TV shows talking about maybe UFOs and some kind of interference or whatever. But because I had fished with cicadas, I knew something that was that pattern. It was the this
Vibration.
vibration, but there was a
Right.
scratching too, almost like a record on a needle on a record, right? That if you
Mhm.
scratch it. So it took me a little while, and I'm like, listen, here's what I think you got. I think you put your recorder out there, a cicada got on top of the device, and it's making this
Okay.
buzzing. That's the pattern I think I'm hearing. Then that scratching you're hearing are the legs getting up on the mic. He's
Okay.
like, oh my God. But that might be the only thing I could identify for. You know what I mean? So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
but because he sent it to Podunk Rogers down in Tennessee, I'm not saying it's correct, but it put him on that path of like, you know what, that might we'll get it
Right.
analyzed or whatever. So,
Yeah.
um,
Exactly.
and but that type of stuff I appreciate because it lets you get past it, move on to the next thing. And if I ever hear that again, or he hears it again, he'll know. And so now,
Right.
if I hear a mountain lion whistle at night, that's still something you need to know
Exactly. Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
don't want to come between mama and babies, right? On anything, I don't
Yeah.
care what it is. So that's good
Yeah.
information to have to keep
Yeah.
from getting bit. So, right.
Yeah. One of my cousins, she sent me a video one day, and she's like, Joe, she goes, I need you to look at something. She goes, me and the girls were freaking out. She had girls at the time. I think they were maybe they're older now, but they were young. And she goes, we are freaking out. She goes, we saw something in our backyard, and we caught it on our security camera. I said, yeah, send it to me. And I'm looking, and there's this big freaking beach ball orb going across the screen, right?
Hmm.
And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is that? So I go to my laptop because I was looking on my phone. I go to my laptop. I'm looking on my laptop, and on the edges, I can see this. It's a bug going across the lens.
Right. And hey,
You know?
I have seen those things that make you go, wait a minute, and then, like you
Yeah.
said, put it on a bigger screen or whatever. But there are things that we can't
Yeah.
explain too, right?
Right.
But if you go through all those steps trying to debunk it or explain it, and then you can't come up with an answer, and you've sent it to a dozen people and they can't come up with an answer, then you know,
Right.
then you got to look at other possibilities. So that I think I've always said, and then I think a lot of people may do this now, But I've always said, you need a couple different scientists that have different studies, and you need to have
Yeah.
some hunters from the area that have these sound banks and have where and it's all about not wasting time, right? If you see
Right.
something, if I can tell you, we had a guy one time. um I was co-hosting, and this guy was interviewing a fella, and so you don't want to hurt people's feelings, especially live. And so this guy, hey, this is something Bigfoot made, and blah blah blah, and I've got them put up in these mason jars, and I find them all the time, and I'm sitting there thinking, boy, them squirrels are gonna be mad when they find out you stole their nest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I'm but
man.
I'm not I'm not I didn't tell him. I didn't want
Yeah.
to hurt his feelings. But
Yeah.
I'm looking at squirrel's nest that he's pulled down out of the tree.
Yeah.
And now if we'd have been at his house and he pulled that out
Mhm.
and said, "I'm like, hey man, that's a squirrel's nest." I don't.
Mhm.
That's just what it is. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. 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 And the same thing goes when I'm not saying Bigfoot doesn't do this, but the whole gifting
yeah,
thing, people say, yeah, Bigfoot brought me a rock or he brought me this. I'm like,
yeah.
other animals do that too.
And
Other animals, but, and I don't, but I keep my mouth shut.
we found a large vertebrae bone in a spot where there's a boneyard that this guy finally said, "Hey, I need y'all to come look at this area." And I'm gonna tell you right now, it's creepy. And we found a
Mhm.
trackway, but it wasn't good enough to say, "Hey, this is a trackway." But the distance apart and the size, the consistent size in this creek, this muddy creek, I can't tell you what it was, but I can tell you what it could be. And then, but when we got there, this guy's not one of these fellas that listens to the podcast. He's not. He don't know any of this stuff. He just heard my son talking at work. Said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." They had had a cow killed, and the looked like the spine had been broken, and the tail almost ripped off, and um, the jaw. There's a piece of the jaw and the bone missing, but he said there were no teeth marks. So we were down there looking, and um, we my son spotted something in the woods. We went to it, and there was a bone, a large vertebrae bone, on this fallen tree that'd been there for a decade probably. And the tree had, and I'm looking at it, and I know it's too big for a squirrel or a field mouse or um, you know, uh, chipmunk or whatever to drag that thing up there and just place it right there on that tree. The first thing I did, I looked at him. I said, "Are you messing with us?" And I did it quickly. I wanted to see his reaction. And I said, "Are you messing with us?" He said, "What do you mean, messing with you?" I said, "Did you place this here?" Trying to, he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And my son said, "I'm the one that spotted it." But his reaction told me he didn't even know why I was asking that. He didn't know.
Yeah.
He didn't. I can't tell you what put that there, but I can tell you it was really odd. And either
Yeah.
somebody did it, or who knows. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it was. I'm saying it was odd, out of place. Couldn't figure out a reason for it. It didn't have any meat on the bone. The vertebrae was years old. There was nothing left for like a coyote to come along and or something hop up on the tree and sit there and finish it off. That was way past that point. So
Yeah.
we have no idea what that was, but it
Hmm.
was strange that it was in that site. But I
Right.
always look like the orb I was talking about. We saw an orb. I don't even remember if I was telling you that or telling somebody else that tonight.
Yeah. No, you were telling me that in the beginning.
I'm telling you, yeah, the orb we saw. I mean, the next day when I went back, I didn't look up in the tree the first thing. I looked at the base. I was looking for leaves being disturbed to see if somebody had
Okay.
they're playing a trick on us or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you look up. There's no trail cameras. There's no devices. There's no reason for this thing to be in this tree. So
Yeah.
then you have to go. Okay, well maybe it was natural. And I said I was in a chat on a show earlier, and they were talking about orbs. And I believe this is just me. They said, are they supernatural or are they Bigfoot related or whatever? And I believe that the two that I saw, there's one I don't know if it was an orb or not, but the two that I saw up close and personal, I believe one was natural and one was supernatural.
Okay.
Now, the Chapel Hill light, if y'all want to Google that, Chapel Hill, Tennessee, Marshall County, there's a legend about a train track and a hobo and all this. Well, they supposedly see this light or whatever. Well, I saw it one time, but I had seen ball lightning a couple years before that, and to me, it looked like natural energy, ball lightning, and it was magnetically pulled to the track. So I can,
Okay.
and then it was pulled away. I'm scared of stuff like that, but looking at it, I'm thinking, okay, that was just like that ball lightning. It wasn't scary. It looked natural. Then I see a documentary, God, 15, 20 years later, where there's scientists that go in this valley that supposedly people see orbs rising.
Right.
And they said, well, maybe there's a scientific reason. And I don't know the exact combination here, but they had tested the one side of the valley and the other side of the valley. There was lithium in the dirt on one side. There was something else in the dirt on the other side. There was sulfur in the water. There was a big battery. There was
Oh
energy
yeah.
coming up. They solved it. So there's natural, it could be
Right.
natural occurrences, right? Now the one my wife and I saw out, Bigfoot hunting, there was no reason for it to be there. It wasn't perfectly round like the other one. It was pulsating and it was, about that long, and it was 10 foot up in a tree, and we both saw it. We both were seeing the same thing. I backed the truck around different angles to get better looks at it, and it lasted 20 minutes. I wasn't brave enough to go over there and look at it. I mean, and I wasn't smart enough to pick the phone up and try to.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you don't think about that stuff.
No, we're trying to figure it
Yeah.
out, right? And
Yeah.
so when people say, "Where's the proof? Where's the pictures? Where are the videos?" I'm like, doing the best we can do. We're not sitting on the
Yeah.
couch. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, there's a couple of places here in Texas where the lights have been seen and they're like documented. People.
Hmm.
There's a place called Marfa, Texas, and it's called the Marfa Lights. People can look that up, and they've had like scientists from all over the world come and try to figure out where these lights are coming from, and they have no idea. I mean, they're like orbs,
Hmm.
and it's out there like in the desert area, and they just like shoot across the desert, and people haven't been able to
Well,
figure out what they are.
the
Yeah.
the one that I saw, when it looked like it was drawn to the tracks from out of the
Mm.
woods, and then when it got up on the tracks, it stabilized, it shook, and then it leveled off.
Oh,
Then it
okay.
started sliding toward us, like like you would a magnet would fighting between the positive negative, and it came to us a few feet, and then it was like it was ripped off, and it went through the woods, and um, I know that's not Bigfoot, but we talk about seeing these things because when you're out late at night, and we've had, I don't know whether it's paranormal or whatever, but there's things going on out there, right?
Oh,
And it's
exactly.
not. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that because you've had some experience. Did you think a Bigfoot might be an area, or one or two or three of them, that this is
Right.
tied together? Now it possibly could be, but I
Right.
haven't seen a Bigfoot step up into a UFO, and I haven't seen it come
Right.
out of a portal. So until I see that, I'm gonna leave it as a possibility over here. Maybe
Right.
think about this. And I know you've probably heard this. My son made a um, comment coming back from Gatlinburg at the first Bigfoot conference we ever went to, and he's down to earth. He thinks things through. He's really analytical, and he said we talked to some you know really good witnesses, and we saw things on phones that was incredible. It was worth the trip to get to talk to them and see what they had taken pictures of and stuff. He said, "Daddy, think about this." He said, "How would you like to have been the first person to come to the group and say, I saw something today. It jumped on the tree. It changed color to the same color as the tree, but then when it went down in the grass, it turned green, and then he's talking about a chameleon, right? But that sounds so incredible. If you don't know what a chameleon is, he said, what about the first person that tried to explain an octopus and what it could do, or the eel? I grabbed an
Mhm.
eel. I grabbed this thing, this long looking fish, and it. I woke up 2 hours later on the bank. It shocked
Yeah.
me. We don't know. There's some
Yeah.
pretty normal animals that can do some incredible things that if
Yeah.
you didn't
Yeah.
know.
I'm a firm believer that there's a lot of things out there we don't know about, whether it be flesh and blood,
That's
supernatural,
right.
paranormal. And I think that all that gets lumped in together sometimes
Hmm.
when it's really all just separate.
It could be, yeah.
I think that there's a lot more paranormal stuff that goes on in the forest than what people think,
Hmm.
whether it is hearing footsteps or hearing even voices or stuff getting thrown. You know, uh, I think that there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the forest, and it just all gets lumped in together with Bigfoot.
Well, I've heard a woman laugh at two different times in
Oh,
one of
really?
our areas, and I don't think it was a female Bigfoot. I think that something's going on there that may be paranormal. And you look at you people forget history. The Southeast, back in the 1860s was a pretty horrible place to be because there was battles and skirmishes going on, and
Right?
and people fighting over land in Texas and all over this
Mhm.
place. There's up in Oklahoma, and there was wars going on, little battles that we don't even know about, right? Some
Right?
horrible
Yeah.
stuff that probably happened. Um,
There's some places here in Houston, downtown, and people see spirits all the time. But the majority of the people here in Houston have no idea that all the tragedy that took place, like during the Civil War, there weren't any major battles that were fought here
mhm.
in Houston, but there was a lot of soldiers brought here that died, that were injured, getting amputated, stuff
Yeah,
like that. And so they see these apparitions, they see these spirits, but I mean, the vast majority, probably 99% of the people that go downtown don't even know
they have no
about
idea.
all those.
And
Yeah,
and one thing is, like I've said before, it scare some of these things scare people, so they shy away from it or whatever, and also they don't realize they may walk by a house that might have been used as a makeshift hospital,
right.
or
Yeah,
morgue. We were in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Me and my mom a few years ago and had some crazy stuff happen at the Arlington. We didn't know what we were getting into. We were just stopping for the evening, and the bathhouses down there where all the rich people used to come to get in those hot springs baths, and then you had the the gambling going on. It was like Vegas before Vegas, where you had all the mobsters out there and all the disappearing people. But there was one particular building that either World War I or II, they would bring soldiers in that were wounded pretty bad, and they were
mhm,
dying at a crazy rate. And during the
right.
winter, they said every year, even now in 2023, every year they have to paint that block wall with that smell canceling paint
Oh,
because
wow.
they had bodies stacked up outside in the wintertime all up that wall because they didn't have anywhere to put them, and they were
Right.
having to come and get them, and they stayed out there up against that wall, and that leached in. And now even today they still every year they have to cover that up. So
Great.
yeah, and that's stuff we don't know if we don't ask.
Yeah, yeah. There's probably a lot of that stuff that goes on that
Hmm.
that even you and I will never know about.
Exactly.
And you and I, look for this kind of stuff, or people come to us with this kind of stuff, and we'll never know. But dude, we went way over the hour. Hope you don't mind. And it was great talking. I know we could probably go for another
Oh
hour
yeah.
because there's so much stuff I'd love to tell you. But real quick, why don't you give out your information and tell people where they can find you and find your show?
Well, y'all, if you would like to come by and hear some stories, what we do just like Joe here, real stories, real people, and um, we we try to have a good mixture of guests. Uh, and the name of the channel, you got me. I'm not used to promoting here. The name of the channel is Squatchin Holler, and just like this right here, you can find it on YouTube at R Dodger 1971, capital R, first one, and just give us a try, subscribe, and if you don't like it, unsubscribe. Some of these shows they're not for everybody, but we I one thing you're gonna get the truth as we know it. And I don't plan on having anybody on that's gonna be faking stuff because y'all think y'all could tell that pretty quickly, but I do have an open mind.
Right.
And so everybody's welcome to share their stories. And Joe, I had a show last night, and right as it was ending, I got this incredible email came through, and I shared it with Don. I'm gonna ask the lady if I can read it on air. But that's why we do this, because that lady got a chance to tell something happened in her family in 1971, 72, 73 from this county. And she lives in North Florida now, and she has no reason to lie. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
and that's why we do all this. And I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to be on this side and
Mhm.
more relaxing. And you can tell you get me started talking. We I have a ton of stuff. You have a ton of stuff. We can do it again. I can have you on one time on my show if
No,
you want to.
definitely, man. And yeah, you probably won't get me to shut up, but yeah,
That's, I'm all right with it.
yeah,
We'll uh we'll make sure it's not one of those Tuesday shows when I have to get up at 5 o'clock the next day. It'll be like a Friday or something.
yeah, that's good with me, man. Yeah, just let me know. I'll be happy to do it. And if you're not um, a member of the Beyond the Woodline fan page, join it, or I'll send you an invite. And man, you can post your shows on there, your whatever you
Okay, I
want, or
appreciate it.
whatever you got going on. I'll be
Just
happy
send
to.
me the link. I've got a Facebook page, Squatchin Holler. I'll do the same for you. I'll send you an invite.
Okay.
And same thing, post your shows. Because the one thing I have found out, you're this you're not this is not about making money at all.
Yeah,
And so what we're sharing information, and everybody's so supportive.
yeah,
Um,
dude, that's what it's
and
about, man.
that's what it's about. I mean,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
Um,
I spend more money doing all this stuff than I'll ever make.
I know, I know. I don't even know when you start making money. I don't even know when that is. But
Yeah, probably never.
yeah, but it would be nice to upgrade and get to go on some trips and because we have people, you have people, I have people that they're older or they're younger and they can't get out and do this stuff. We take
Yeah,
it for granted that we're able to get out sometimes, and so I enjoy if you go live. If you went live tomorrow night somewhere in your area, I would be glued to the camera because it, I don't know how to put it. It's just fun to watch, and we do it for the people that don't get to do it.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
But anyway, I'll shut up.
Well, cool beans, man, dude. That was a great talking to you. Hold on, real quick. Uh, Everybody else in the chat room, and I appreciate Roger's fan club for joining the show. Uh, you guys are great, man. I do appreciate it. Sandra, I hope you get better, and yeah, keep us updated. And I'm glad you're able to watch the show tonight. So thank you for tuning in. And with that, I do have a show next Monday. It's with Anthony, and yeah, so you guys tune in for that next Monday, and we'll see you then. Hold on, real quick, Roger.